weeks in a row with headline-making news from the Capitol as National Guardsmen camp out in the halls and prepare to protect the incoming president. This morning, your elected lawmakers weigh in on the insurrection, the impeachment, and the inauguration on This Week in Jacksonville. Kat Justice, thanks so much for joining us today. This morning, lots to get to. We have News for Jack's political analyst and director of Jacksonville University's Public Policy Institute. That's Rick Mullaney, along with members of Congress, Al Lawson, Buddy Carter, and Kat Kamik, along with former Congressman David Jolly. We begin with Rick and U.S. Representatives Carter and Lawson joining us virtually. Congressman Lawson is in Tallahassee. Congressman, how do you feel about what's happened in the past 2 Wednesdays with the Capitol attack and then the House voting to impeach President Trump, blaming him for the siege?
You know, it was incomprehensible. Never would think that the Capitol was supposed to be the safest place in America and it really around the world, and that a mob that was led by the president would be able to take over Congress and put members of Congress, House and Senate members in jeopardy. And so it is something that I never envisioned in my 4 years of serving in Congress that I would see anything like that. And it really, members didn't feel protected because of what really happened. And they were not prepared to deal with it, security. And there was other people involved. You know, they knew exactly what they were doing and where they were going. And so it's really incredible that people, some women, we have more women elected to Congress than ever before, and men and women was very frightened that they come here in the Congress and they were not protected.
Yeah. What about you, Congressman Carter? How do you feel about what happened? And clearly everyone, regardless of party, seems to be horrified by this.
Well, and they should be. Look, what happened with the protesters, the rioters on January 6th was despicable, and I condemn it. And I think all of us condemn it, whether you're Republican, an independent, or a Democrat. This is not the way that we need to be doing business in the United States. We saw it this past summer. We saw what happened in our major metropolitan areas, Minneapolis and Portland, with the riots, with the looting, with the destruction. They serve no useful purpose whatsoever. And certainly what happened at the Capitol served no useful purpose whatsoever. And it actually takes the focus away from the issue itself. You know, what they were protesting earlier this summer, social injustice, Black Lives Matters, those are important issues that need to be talked about in our country. Election integrity is an important issue that needs to be talked about in our country. That's why the looting and the destruction, that serves no useful purpose whatsoever. And I will say that those who were responsible need to be prosecuted to the highest level of the law, and they need to be put in jail.
Congressman Lawson, last Wednesday, you voted in favor of impeachment, and of course, the president was impeached. And one of the primary purposes of impeachment is to remove someone from office. Well, this Wednesday, 3 days from now, President Trump will no longer be president. So my question is, why move forward with impeachment when the president will be out of office at the time of his trial?
Well, I think it's very important simply because the president took an oath of office to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States for foreigners and domestic. And he did not do that. He called a rally. You know, this was a formality, counting the Electoral College votes. And he called a rally. And he told the mob that he was going to join them at the Capitol. And he chickened out, and he did not join them. And then at the same time, the vice president had to be hustled off to a disclosed place. This should not have happened. Security was not provided, and there was a repeated calls to the president telling him to call these people off. And it was at the last moment when he said, well, we shouldn't do this and do that. He cannot serve the American people anymore. And so we really needed to remove him. And whether you're Democrat or Republican, no matter what your philosophy is, this should have never happened. How would the president of the United States let a mob come down and take over the Capitol and put all these people at risk?
Congressman Carter, let me ask you a question. On Wednesday, you voted against impeachment, and a number of Republicans pointed out they felt it could divide the country. It wasn't in the best interest of the country. Laying that aside, my question to you is this. Was the conduct of the president impeachable? Did he, in his speech at noon, did he, what he did with Vice President Pence, encouraging him to overturn those electoral votes from the states, and his course of conduct, do you believe the president bears responsibility for what happened? Did he commit an impeachable offense on the merits?
You know, I don't know that it rises to the level of an impeachable offense. I think the president probably could have toned down his remarks some, and I suspect he understands that as well. But the point still remains is that the actions of the individuals, they have to be responsible for that. You know, actions have consequences. We all teach our children that, and these people need to understand that their actions are going to have consequences. And you know, you can't control someone else's actions. You can only control your actions. But certainly, impeachment is the last thing we need at this point. Our country is divided. We need to come together. We don't need to be fanning the flames. We don't need to be putting salt in the wound right now. We've got less than a week before this president will be out of office and before Joe Biden will be president, Kamala Harris will be vice president. And I commit to you that I'm going to work with them. I'm going to do my best to find common ground and move this country forward.
Well, I appreciate that, Congressman Carter. There are several people who have said, not my president. When it came to President Trump, I was going to ask you if Mr. Biden would be your president. It sounds like you're saying yes, right?
Well, and that's important to note because you are absolutely right, Kent. For the last 4 years, the Democrats have done nothing but reject this president. You know, everybody talks about how the Republicans voted to not certify electoral votes from certain states. Well, let's remember that in 2017, that the Democrats actually objected to more states than we did as Republicans this time. Not only that, but here we go again with trying to impeach this president. The Democrats have never accepted that Donald J. Trump was president of the United States. I'm not going to follow that example. I'm going to set my own example. I'm going to do my best to work with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, find common ground, and move this country forward.
Well, one of the things Congressman Lawson has told me and lived up to it many times, sir, you said, hey, I'm willing to cross party lines and work for the betterment of the people that we represent. I want to talk a little bit before we run out of time about what's coming up this week, inauguration, and the entire National Mall is going to be closed on Inauguration Day, only accessible by security personnel and news organizations. We've got some video here, and it's significant because the mall is the place where traditionally the general public goes and views the inauguration. At the Capitol, they do it from a distance. Often on those large Jumbotron screens. I've been there, and it's going to be such a different kind of inauguration this year. Final comments, I guess, in this segment for each of you. Congressman Lawson, what do you hope, what do you expect in these early days to see from this new administration as the president becomes Joe Biden?
Well, Joe Biden has already stated that he's going to be the president for the people. Whether the Democrat, Republican, Independents, or what have you. And that's good because we needed that. And I think that the country is divided. But the president caused a lot of this, you know, and I've always recognized him as a president. The president caused a lot of diversity and conflict between members all over the place. And I served under Republican governors, Republican House and Senate here in Florida. And we never had that kind of problem. We can always come together to make things happen. But when you have someone in the Oval Office, someone that's going to be very vindictive and cause all of these problems, then it's going to spread out, not only in Congress, but throughout America. And that's what we have. And so we need a lot of healing that is going to take place, and someone that will stand up there and say, we're going to be president. The president called that rally. And his kids talked at rally, and his lawyers and everybody say what they were going to do. And then he went against the vice president if he didn't do what he wanted him to do. So, you know, we have to be honest and say exactly what happened. The president is not fit for office. And I'm glad that he is leaving because he has created almost like a civil war in America. And we really don't need that. We're an embarrassment, not only in the United States, but throughout the world. Yeah. And it should not be like that.
Congressman Carter, let me let you get the last word here. What's your best hope for the first 100 days of a Joe Biden administration?
Well, what I hope it does not happen is that I hope the Democrats don't overreach, and I'm sure that they will. President-elect Biden has already offered a $1.9 trillion plan that's going to include $15 an hour minimum wage, that's going to include money to bail out municipalities and cities that have mismanaged their pension funds and has nothing to do with the pandemic whatsoever. That's what we're going to see in the first 100 days. If this is the first piece of legislation, I dare not hold my breath to see what else is going to be coming behind it.
Well, I knew you would have different views, but that's what people wanted to hear, is what your views were on such an incredible, memorable, unforgettable time in our nation's history. Buddy Carter and Al Lawson, members of the House of Representatives. Rick Mullaney will stay with us, but gentlemen, thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
So as a new Congress gets underway, we are going to hear from one of its newest members from right here in Northeast Florida. My conversation with Congresswoman Kat Kamik next on This Week in Jacksonville.
Some clients say they're not the type of person who sues, but many of our cases are settled without having to sue anyone. In almost all of our car crash cases, insurance companies are responsible for paying the claim, not the person who hit you. There's only one Morgan & Morgan.
Lower, wider, and slightly more aggressive. The 2021 Toyota Corolla. Lease a new 2021 Toyota Corolla LE for just $179 a month for 36 months. Toyota. Let's go places.
Great day on the lake.
It is.
Lunch is cooking.
And I saved a bunch of money on my boat insurance with Geico.
Are you?
Fellas, can it get any better than this? Whoa. My old hairstyle grew back.
So did mine.
What? I was an 80s kid.
It only gets better when you switch and save with Geico.
Hands down, the most anticipated gaming platform ever conceived. Register now at 360win.com to play completely free for more money and with a better chance of winning than you've ever imagined. Then when you win, pick your favorite charity or cause, and our sponsors will make a matching donation to them in your honor. There is absolutely nothing like 360win.com. Use the code WOW to get a special bonus.
Goodwill Industries is proud to have served North Florida for over 80 years. Through your donations, we create jobs, provide educational resources, and mentoring programs for people like Montarius.
I was pretty much in like some trailer homes, taking like 3 buses to get to school. Take Stock in Children gave me the opportunity to attend college.
Take Stock in Children's role under Goodwill is we come in and we help them attain their goals and dreams.
If it wasn't for Take Stock, I wouldn't be here.
We are Goodwill, removing barriers to employment.
Window World professionally installs hurricane protection with the highest quality impact windows, shutters, patio, and entry doors. When thinking hurricane protection, think Window World. We'll get you ready. Allow peace of mind for you, your family, and your home. Search Window World today.
The heart of life is about community, lifting up people around you. In 2021, join us in Random Jacks of Kindness, a year-long commitment to paying it forward with acts big and small. This Martin Luther King Jr. Day, News 4 Jacks and Feeding Northeast Florida are collecting non-perishable food for local families. Drop off your donation at the Channel 4 studio or donate online. Practice Random Jacks of Kindness all year. Sign the pledge on PositivelyJacks.com.
You're watching This Week in Jacksonville with Kent Justice.
To add to the voices you hear this morning, I spoke with Representative Kat Kamik, elected in Florida District 3, which includes Clay County and Gainesville. Her first 2 weeks on the job have been unforgettable.
This has been coming for a long time. The temperature has been rising in our country, not just for 4 years, but for a long time. And so this, I think, is a wake-up call to everybody, Republicans, Democrats alike, that, you know, we have got to get very serious about working on the problems that our constituents keep voting for us to go up to Washington and work on. But I can tell you the first 12 days experiencing having been on the House floor when the Capitol was breached, being 20 feet away from Capitol Police pulling their guns and, you know, pushing back, fighting back with these rioters. It's still something that I'm probably going to be processing for a long time, but it doesn't deter me in any way from the fight that we have ahead. I'm still committed as ever to working for my constituents here in Florida's 3rd District. But I got to tell you, I have never seen more vitriol and anger and frustration in our country. And I've told people that I've never been more sad and heartbroken for the state where we are right now. It's something that isn't sustainable. So we've got to get back on track.
You didn't vote to impeach President Trump. There's even some legal arguments about whether it's even allowable since he'll be out of office by the time that trial gets underway or concludes. Where do you stand on that? And your support clearly has been in the past for President Trump.
I'm very frustrated that the emphasis and focus of our leadership in Washington, D.C. is on some sham impeachment trial that may or may not happen in the Senate. McConnell has indicated that he won't be picking it up during the remaining time in his tenure. And of course, alluded to, there are some questions about what happens in the time that the Democrats take over the Senate. So with all those unknowns, is that really what Americans want us to be focusing on? And we're at home in Gainesville and Ocala and Clay County and Putnam County? No, they need real leadership. They need people that are focused on recovering from COVID-19. We've got hundreds of thousands of businesses that have gone under, millions of people on unemployment. These are the issues that we need to be focusing on, not some sham political witch hunt that is just completely gone off the rails.
So the sham political witch hunt, kind of, you calling it that is exactly what President Trump says. Mm-hmm. Don't you think, and maybe you don't, so please explain that, he should be held accountable for the language that may have incited people to breach the Capitol where you were?
And of course, there's no excuse for what happened last week. Absolutely not. Everyone bears responsibility for the words that they say, and there need to be consequences. But is an impeachment trial that has been thrown together, is that really in the way of uniting our country? I don't think so. So the hypocrisy has got to stop. That's part of the reason why I ran for Congress. I see hypocrisy in government at an all-time high. And so if the left is going to condemn the words of the president, which, by the way, I listened to his speech. His speech was still going on when the breach occurred. So that tells me that this was in the works well beyond the president's remarks on Wednesday. But even still, you know, we need to be taking a look honestly about the words that have been said by President Trump, by Maxine Waters, by Nancy Pelosi, by all leaders. And so I push back on this narrative that the president is squarely alone to blame in all this.
And when we come back, what does it take to vote against your party? More on the national news from a lawmaker from Florida, former Congressman David Jolly, next on This Week in Jacksonville.
At Harrell & Harrell, we've taken on some of the biggest trucking companies and retailers in the country. We have the money and resources to stand up to anyone. Put our resources and experience to work for you. Harrell & Harrell. Don't settle for less than you deserve.
Your mother is a special lady, and on her special day, you promised her a special celebration. But if slow upload speeds won't let your video call through because you have cable, just remember, you're not a bad son. You just need better internet.
AT&T Fiber delivers a faster internet experience with 20 times faster upload speeds than cable. Bundle AT&T Fiber with AT&T TV starting at $84.99 a month for a year. Limited availability in select areas. Call 1-877-ONLY-ATT.
Still hard to find a spot, just easier to park. Still the big move, just more moving. Still singing, just more in tune. Still the gang's all here, just less are we there yet. The Chevy family of SUVs, making life's journey just better.
Current competitive owners with an eligible GM credit card can get $7,250 total allowance on most 2020 Equinox models. Find new roads at your local Chevy dealer.
The unknown is not empty. It's a storm that crashes and consumes, replacing thought with worry. But one thing can calm uncertainty. An answer. Uncovered through exploration, teamwork, and innovation. An answer that leads to even more answers. Mayo Clinic. You know where to go.
Want to spread the word about your favorite local hangout? Or warn your neighbors about risky storm damage? Maybe you're looking for tonight's photo-worthy feast or need to track down important supplies. Do it all and more with Snapjacks. I can do it right now. Go to your News4Jax Insider account or join for free on news4jax.com. Click the Snapjacks button, upload your photo, and tell your fellow insiders where you snapped it. Become a News4Jax Insider for free and start sharing photos on Snapjacks today.
My father had 2 heart attacks and is missing half of one of his lungs from smoking. It really makes me regret ever starting. I don't want to smoke because I don't want to be like my dad. I don't want to be in a wheelchair with an oxygen machine behind me. I want to quit to be healthy. I want to be able to be there with my children. I want to enjoy life to the fullest.
Visit tobaccofreeflorida.com to find free resources to help you quit your way.
When you understand and you believe in the client, that gives you all the power you need to take on any insurance company. And you have to be able to care, because if you don't care, you can't help. Farah and Farah, here for you, here for good.
You're watching This Week in Jacksonville on Channel 4.
Thanks for staying with us today. Rick Mullaney is with us, and now joining us from Indian Shores, Florida, is former Congressman David Jolly. Mr. Jolly, you represented Pinellas County 2014 to 2017 as a Republican, and since then you become no party affiliation. How hard is it to stand against your party like 10 Republicans did this week when they voted yes to impeach President Trump?
Yeah. I suppose it depends on which convictions you answer to. You know, I took to the floor of the House in 2015, I believe it was, when Donald Trump was a candidate and became, at the time, the only member of Congress to speak out against Donald Trump, only Republican member. Many of my advisors said it was political suicide, and perhaps it was. But I tell that story because it depends on which convictions you answer to. I believe members of Congress, elected officials, should lead in these moments, not follow. And I think a lot of Republicans are bowing to the pressure they rightly feel within their party, right? Strong support for Donald Trump within the Republican Party, even if they feel like maybe it's the time to speak out against some of the behaviors we've seen. We did see 10 House members do it. I would say their political future now might be a little bit in question, as might their safety as well.
Congressman, I have a two-part question for you. The first part is focusing just on the conduct of the president. Did his conduct, in your opinion, constitute an impeachable offense? Did he commit an impeachable offense? Second part, if you believe it did, given the fact that he's out of office on Wednesday, is it in the best interest of the nation to go forward with an impeachment trial?
Yeah, I appreciate that question. And the answer for me is yes and yes. And let's just approach the case from a prosecutorial mindset. Donald Trump laid the predicate. He laid the narrative that the election was rigged. He then issued the invitation for people to come on January 6th to Washington, a date that otherwise no one would have known was a significant date. He issued the invitation, come to Washington, it will be wild. And then he spoke to the crowd and he issued the charge and said, go to the Capitol, I will be with you, and act with strength, not weakness. I believe that's sufficient evidence for what the president ultimately was impeached for, which is an article saying that he did incite an insurrection. Is the process worth it? Yes, and I would say, as someone who's worked with the House for 20 years, this is as much about the integrity of the Congress exercising its responsibility, not its choice, its responsibility if a president engages in this behavior.
Can I ask a follow-up?
Now, for the trial, I do think there's, sure.
Just as a follow-up for that.
For the trial, look, I do think there should be some deference. I think there should be some deference given to Joe Biden. Perhaps the trial could wait a little bit. The only question is whether or not Donald Trump should be able to run for office again. He clearly will be out of office.
Yeah, my follow-up was going to be, given the fact that he will be out of office and given the fact that there are alternatives such as a censure or even indictment by a U.S. Attorney's office, do you really think during the first 100 days of the Joe Biden presidency is in the best interest to go forward with it, given the fact that maybe in the eyes of many, the primary purpose of an impeachment is to remove someone from office and he will be out of office?
Now, it's a great question. It's a question for us as a country, right? We have a new president who has to tackle the pandemic, has to restore a newer hand, a steadier hand when it comes to our national security apparatus, much in front of him. And look, the Senate holds impeachment hearings relatively often. It's not every day, but it's not always about a president. And their model when they hold impeachment hearings for a federal judge is that the chamber will meet for about 3 hours in the morning to hold that hearing, break for lunch, and come back for regular business. I think that could be done in this moment. There's no urgency about the removal of the president or not. The only question is, should the Senate find him guilty, and should the penalty be that he cannot be a candidate again? There's no urgency to that. Certainly no more urgency to that than there is for President Biden to have a clean slate to deal with the COVID pandemic.
It's unfortunate in many ways, but we already know that there's a Republican congresswoman in Georgia who says no clean slate for Joe Biden. As soon as he takes office, she is going to file articles of impeachment. This is Marjorie Taylor Greene, who represents Northwest Georgia. She says she's going to file those on January 21st, the day after inauguration. Congressman Jolly, is this just feels like maybe what we've seen that's been so divisive just goes on as we get into a new administration?
Yeah, it's not going to stop. But questions this week about the 10 House members that voted for impeachment, or Mitch McConnell possibly voting to convict. The questions have been, does that mean the Republican Party might be coming back to where it was? I don't see that. I see those votes as the last gasps of the old Republican Party. Today's Republican Party is one of Matt Gaetz and Jim Jordan and Josh Hawley and this newly elected woman from Georgia. Even though 10 members broke this week, consider that 190 of them voted to back the president. The heartbeat of the Republican Party is not what it used to be. It is in the lane that Marjorie, I forget her last name, from
Taylor
Georgia
Greene.
is.
Yeah.
It's the reason you saw that 2,000 Republicans in Tampa Bay alone this week left the party and joined another party.
Yeah. Crisis moments for the United States in a lot of different ways. Just very, very briefly, Congressman Jolly, Rick Mullaney and I have talked about, if you're an American, no matter what party you've been in, it's been disheartening to see what's happening these last few weeks, right?
It certainly has. And look, we had a president indicted, impeached for incitement of an insurrection. That's unlike any past impeachment. It's almost normalized now, and we choose our political sides around such a grave charge. We should expect better of our elected officials, but I think as a national community, our culture, we have to ask ourselves, what can we be doing differently to elevate our political discourse and the discourse with our neighbors?
And Congressman,
we
I
are a
appreciate
strong people if we can avoid what divides us.
I've got to avoid going too long here, but we are so glad that you joined us this morning. Rick Mullaney, thanks for joining us as well. You've been watching This Week in Jacksonville. Thanks for joining us.
See why every day more people are choosing News 4 Jax, Northeast Florida and South Georgia's #1 source for local news.